Hello everyone, welcome to Diplomatic Briefing. The Chinese and U.S. delegations held the first meeting of the China-U.S. Economic and Trade Consultation Mechanism in London. Regardless of whether there are any results, the atmosphere has improved compared to the last round of talks in Geneva. At the very least, before the meeting, representatives from both countries allowed the media to take photos. Vice Premier He Feng and U.S. Treasury Secretary Besant even shook hands in front of the cameras. Thinking back to the last round of talks in Geneva, the media had to chase after cars and wait outside the residence of the Swiss ambassador to the United Nations all day, only able to capture footage of the delegation's cars coming and going. It was clear that at that time, both sides' representatives were quite distrustful of each other. From the group photo taken before the meeting, you can see that the main members of the U.S. delegation included Treasury Secretary Besant, Trade Representative Greer, and Commerce Secretary Roderick. Why these three people? What are their respective roles? CCTV's self-media platform Yuyuan Tantian published an analysis titled, "Who Did the U.S. Bring to the Negotiations This Time?" to examine the American negotiators. The article points out that, judging from the responsibilities of the U.S. delegation, Besant is in charge of macroeconomic and financial issues. He is a key figure in implementing the Trump administration's tariff policies, plays a coordinating role, and leads negotiations with multiple countries. In February this year, after the U.S. imposed the so-called fentanyl tariffs on China, the Chinese lead representative for China-U.S. economic and trade talks held a video call with Besant at the latter's request, during which the Chinese side expressed serious concerns. As for Greer, his main area of responsibility is tariffs, and he is more like a professional negotiator handling various trade talks for the U.S. side. This time, the newly joined negotiator, Roderick, comes from the U.S. Department of Commerce and is relatively more focused on the industrial level, such as issues related to exports, imports, and market access in various sectors. Overall, looking at the current division of roles, the U.S. Department of the Treasury is mainly responsible for overall coordination. The Department of Commerce focuses on industry, while the Office of the U.S. Trade Representative mainly handles the technical terms of negotiations. According to the article, there are at least 4 pain points in the current U.S. economy. First, the growth rate of the macroeconomy is slowing down. In the first quarter of 2025, the U.S. GDP shrank by 0.3% quarter-on-quarter. Second, there is upward pressure on inflation. U.S. 1-year and 5-year inflation expectations have even surged to 6.7% and 4.4% respectively. Third, the tariff policies affecting manufacturing have not brought positive effects to U.S. manufacturing. The New York Fed Manufacturing Index has deteriorated to -9.2, remaining in negative territory, which shows that U.S. manufacturing is still in a state of contraction. Fourth, there is a slowdown in trade. In April, the U.S. saw the largest drop in import and export value in history. Due to uncertainty over tariff changes, U.S. trade has slowed down significantly. The CCTV article specifically mentioned Roderick by name, saying that when Roderick attended an event hosted by U.S. media in May, he revealed that the additional tariffs would have an impact on American businesses, including causing them pain. However, he also said that this pain is necessary, and insisted that it is countries and companies, not consumers, who pay the tariffs. Regarding the issue of export controls, the U.S. Department of Commerce is actually responsible for industry and export controls. Roderick's participation in this new round of talks may indicate that the U.S. is willing to reconsider some of the technology restrictions that could hinder China's long-term development goals. Roderick's involvement also means that the Chinese side has the right to continue raising concerns about the export controls imposed by the U.S., to request explanations, and to demand responses. As for negotiation tactics, during trade talks with other countries, Roderick has previously commented on their cooperation with China, attempting to apply pressure and influence the normal trade relations between those countries and China. In the conclusion of the article, it is reiterated that China's position is clear. China firmly opposes any party making deals at the expense of China's interests. To reiterate, appeasement does not bring peace, and compromise does not earn respect. Seeking so-called exemptions by sacrificing others' interests for one's own short-term gain is like asking a tiger for its skin. Ultimately, both sides lose out, and it harms others without benefiting oneself. The conclusion is that, no matter who the US sends, they should clearly understand this. China is sincere, but also principled. Since China and the US reached a consensus in Geneva, Trump has continued to introduce other measures to contain China, and China has further refined its rare earth approval system. Foreign media described that the global automotive industry has witnessed the power of China's countermeasures against the US and has fallen into a state of extreme panic. The White House is also under pressure, and Trump seems to be blindly casting about, trying to cut off supplies to various sectors in China. According to recent reports from foreign media, the Trump administration has already asked American companies to suspend the sale of nuclear power plant facilities to China. However, according to analysis cited by the South China Morning Post, this new export restriction will only cause a minor setback to China's nuclear development and cannot stop China from ramping up its efforts and continuing to localize nuclear power construction. Some analysts have also warned that doing this could backfire, causing significant harm to American companies and making them miss out on the huge Chinese market. Some scholars have pointed out that if the U.S. export restrictions on nuclear equipment are implemented, it would mean the Trump administration is taking an even tougher stance in its relations with China. At present, China and the U.S. are still deeply mired in a prolonged trade war, and through reciprocal bans and other mandatory measures, the competition between the two countries in the technology sector continues to escalate. However, analysts also point out that the U.S. halting nuclear equipment sales to China will not change the current state of China-U.S. relations, and might even backfire. This is because major American nuclear facility suppliers like Westinghouse Electric and Emerson could lose out on the vast Chinese market. According to a researcher from the Shenzhen Institute of the Chinese Academy of Sciences, nuclear power generation is one of the areas where China has made significant progress in replacing imported technologies and components. He believes that while U.S. export restrictions on chips and lithography machines to China might have some effect, they won't work when it comes to nuclear energy. The researcher also said that the new U.S. export restrictions might have an impact on China in the short term, since China is planning on building new nuclear power plants to meet energy demands and achieve economic decarbonization. However, the researcher added that as time goes by, the impact will gradually fade away. The report pointed out that China is working hard to develop a self-sufficient nuclear industry based on domestic design models. Of the 10 new reactors approved by China in April this year, 8 will use the domestically developed third-generation nuclear technology, the Hualong 1 reactor. The anonymous researcher said that the new export ban from the U.S. will cause significant harm to American companies like Westinghouse Electric, as they may miss out on new opportunities in China, which is currently the world's largest market for nuclear power products. It mentioned that nuclear power plants in the U.S. and some European countries have already started to retire, which means Westinghouse Electric's business will decrease. Reuters recently quoted sources saying that the Trump administration has already suspended the licenses for American nuclear equipment suppliers to sell products to Chinese power plants. According to 4 people familiar with the matter, the U.S. Department of Commerce has issued a ban to various companies, suspending export licenses for nuclear power plant components and equipment. The report said that in the past 2 weeks, the China-U.S. trade war has shifted from tariff negotiations to mutual supply restrictions, and many companies, including nuclear equipment suppliers, have faced sales restrictions. American nuclear equipment suppliers include Westinghouse Electric and Emerson. According to sources, this ban has affected U.S. companies' businesses worth hundreds of millions of U.S. dollars. Reuters also mentioned that, according to sources, the Trump administration has implemented several new export restrictions against China in the past 2 weeks. Apart from nuclear equipment, the U.S. has also restricted the sale of hydraulic equipment, electronic design automation software, and it was revealed last month that some licenses allowing U.S. companies to sell products and technology to Chinese commercial aircraft companies, namely COMAC, have already been suspended. Foreign Ministry spokesperson Lin Jian responded at the time, saying that the U.S.'s actions are an overextension of the concept of national security, politicizing and weaponizing economic, trade, and technology issues, and maliciously blocking and suppressing China. China firmly opposes this and will resolutely safeguard its legitimate rights and interests. It's worth mentioning that just as Trump is about to withdraw nuclear equipment licenses, the international nuclear energy landscape is undergoing profound changes. With its strong technological capabilities and highly efficient industrial system, China has successfully transformed from a learner to a leader. On May 23, U.S. President Trump signed an executive order encouraging the use of nuclear energy in the civilian sector. Trump plans to speed up the construction of reactors, aiming to quadruple the United States' nuclear energy output within the next 25 years, from the current 100 gigawatts to 400 gigawatts by 2025. However, an article published by L'Express on June 4 pointed out that while the US and Europe are striving to revive the industry, they face serious challenges in terms of policy consistency and industrial foundation. In contrast, China has already taken the lead in areas such as technology, cost, and construction speed. Although Western countries once boosted China's nuclear energy development through technology transfer, a former engineer from EDF, Électricité de France, sighed and said, "We taught China, but now they have surpassed us." In recent years, the momentum behind China's nuclear energy development has been tremendous, and its independent innovation capabilities in nuclear technology have also significantly improved. According to the latest China Nuclear Energy Development Report 2025 Blue Book released by the China Nuclear Energy Association, China now has a total of 102 nuclear power units that are either in operation, under construction, or approved for construction, with an installed capacity reaching 113 million kilowatts. For the first time, the overall scale of China's nuclear power has become the largest in the world. In addition, in 2024, China achieved 100% domestic production of key nuclear power equipment and full independent control over the technology of critical components. Throughout the year, a total of 114 sets of domestic nuclear power main equipment were delivered, ensuring the smooth construction of units such as Hualong 1, the Guohe series, and high-temperature gas-cooled reactors. To sum up a few observations, first, as soon as China played its trump card with rare earths, Trump got extremely anxious. Any product exported to China with even a slightly higher technological content was banned, thinking this would give him more bargaining chips in negotiations with China. The problem is, Trump seems to be living in the past, like 20 or 30 years ago. Take nuclear power equipment as an example. American companies are no longer producing the most advanced equipment these days. China's independently developed Hualong 1 is one of the most advanced nuclear reactors in the world, and its key components can be fully domestically produced. The equipment provided by American companies isn't the critical core equipment, so it doesn't have the power to choke off China's progress. Secondly, for American companies, their related components are already not the most advanced, and with the global nuclear power market outside China slowing down, this is exactly the time when China is going all out to develop. If American companies lose the Chinese market, they won't be able to make a comeback, because it's not hard for China to find alternative suppliers. French companies are strong competitors. In the past, when China considered these large-scale purchases, it would make friends widely, giving American companies a chance to get a share of the pie. Now, they're just cutting off their own business. Thirdly, Trump's move also highlights that when it comes to waging a trade war against China,